No one except me knew that the alien woman working in the mine was a princess. Dust floated in the dim light of hovering lamps, settling on rusted metal and the worn uniforms of the workers. Amid the ordinary hum of drills, carts, and tired voices, one figure moved with unusual grace. Her steps were quiet, deliberate, and somehow heavier than one might expect from someone so light on their feet. No one paid her any mind, yet there was something about her that made her stand out to those who watched closely. She was not just another miner, she was different. Her name was Liara, and though she worked alongside the rest of the laborers, her origins were far from ordinary. Beneath her simple miner's tunic and dusty boots lay the refined elegance of her alien heritage. Her skin shimmered faintly in the right light, a pale lavender hue that hinted at a lineage far removed from the common folk of Carrion. Her eyes were deep and expressive, glimmering with a wisdom and strength that no one in the mine could ever guess. Liara was a princess of a distant star system, but here, deep in the mines, her identity was hidden beneath layers of soot, sweat, and carefully crafted humility. No one in the mine knew her secret, not the gruff foreman who barked orders from the platform above, not the rough men who carried carts of raw minerals, not even the children of the settlement who sometimes ventured too close to the cavern's mouth. Only one person had sensed something different about her, though he would never speak of it. Jerk, a young miner with a sharp mind and a quiet nature, had noticed the way Liara moved with precision, how she handled dangerous tools as if guided by instinct rather than practice, and how she seemed to understand the mine's structure better than anyone else. But Jerk had learned long ago not to ask questions. The universe was full of mysteries, and some were better left unexplored. Liara worked through the morning, her hands expertly guiding the drill into the veins of precious minerals embedded in the rock. She had to appear ordinary, blending in with the hundreds of workers who depended on the mine for their livelihood. Any slip, any hint of her true self could put her in danger. The galaxy was not kind to royal blood, especially to those who had fled for safety. Her planet Ilithar had fallen into political chaos, and Liara had been sent away as a child to protect her life. Now, years later, she found herself among strangers, hiding her identity while still dreaming of a day she might return home. Jerk watched her from a distance, leaning against a support beam and wiping sweat from his brow. He had worked in the mines since he was barely old enough to carry a light cart, and he had learned to notice small things, tiny movements, unusual strength, unusual skill. Liara's presence had unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. There was a calmness about her that contrasted sharply with the chaos of the mine. She didn't panic when the ground trembled or when a section of the cavern wall threatened to collapse. She moved with purpose and confidence, a quiet power that drew his attention even as he tried to ignore it. "Careful over there," called the foreman, a broad man with a permanently furrowed brow. "That vein's tricky. Don't scratch the rock too much or we'll lose time and pay." Liara nodded politely but did not speak. Her hands continued their work, deftly controlling the drill as it bit into the minerals. Dust rose around her, settling on her shoulders and darkening her hair, but she hardly noticed. Her mind was elsewhere, on messages from a distant star system, on memories of a palace long abandoned, on the family she had left behind. She had learned to carry both her past and her present in silence, never revealing the truth even in the smallest gesture. Around midday, the mine became hotter and more crowded. Workers shouted over the noise, carts clattered against metal rails, and the air grew thick with dust. Liara paused for a moment, wiping her brow, and glanced toward the opening of the cavern. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, its red sands catching the harsh sunlight. She longed to be out there among the dunes and the stars, but she knew her survival depended on blending in here. The mine was dangerous, but it was safe in comparison to the forces that had destroyed her home. Here, she could live, and perhaps one day reclaim what had been stolen from her. Jerk approached cautiously, keeping his distance. "You're good," he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the din of the mine. Liara looked up, surprised by the acknowledgement. She had been careful not to attract attention, but Jerk had seen through the mask. She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "I just know what I'm doing," she replied softly, keeping her voice neutral. He studied her, sensing that there was more than met the eye. "Most people struggle with that section," he said. "You handle it like you've done it 100 times." Liara's smile widened slightly, though she kept her eyes down, returning to her work. Experience, she said, keeping her tone casual. The rest of the day passed without incident, but Liara could feel the tension in the mine. Rumors of inspections, new quotas, and the arrival of a wealthy buyer had spread quickly among the workers. She had learned to navigate human or alien politics in her years of exile. Patience, observation, and subtlety were her tools, and she had learned to trust very few people. By evening, when the shadows grew long and the desert sun dipped below the horizon, the miners began to leave. The cavern emptied slowly, the noise fading until only the occasional drip of water echoed through the tunnels. Liara lingered, finishing her last section of work with meticulous care. Her muscles ached, her hands were calloused, but there was satisfaction in the progress she had made. Jerk remained behind as well, though he pretended to be checking equipment. "You stay late often?" he asked casually, though he knew the answer. Liara didn't look up. "Sometimes," she said. "It's quiet then, easier to think." He nodded, sensing there was more she wasn't saying. "I don't know why," he admitted, "but I feel like there's something special about you, something I can't figure out." For a brief moment, Liara's hand froze on the drill. She felt the weight of his words not as a threat, but as a recognition. In all the years she had spent hiding, very few had sensed the truth beneath her exterior. She forced herself to smile, small and careful. "I guess everyone has secrets," she said lightly, hiding the hint of truth in a simple statement. As she finally left the mine, the desert wind whipped against her face, cooling her sweat and carrying the scent of distant rocks and sand. Liara moved with purpose toward the settlement, blending into the crowd of weary miners returning home. Her mind wandered to the stars, to the home she had lost, and to the plan she had been quietly shaping for years. Survival was one thing, but reclaiming her destiny would be another. Jerk watched her go, unable to shake the feeling that he had just encountered someone extraordinary. He didn't know what it was, but a quiet certainty settled in his chest. Liara was not like anyone he had ever met, and somehow he knew he would never forget her. As night fell over the settlement, Liara climbed to a small rooftop overlooking the dunes. The stars stretched endlessly above her, vast and silent, and for the first time that day, she allowed herself to breathe. Somewhere out there, her family lived, waiting for a day when the galaxy might be safe again. Somewhere out there, her people dreamed of her return, and she would make sure that when the day came, no one, not even the most powerful forces in the universe, could stop her. But for now, she was a miner, a worker, just another figure among many, and the secret she carried, the secret of a princess living in exile, would remain hidden. Everyone believed she was ordinary, everyone, that is, except Jerk. And he, for reasons he didn't yet understand, would play a role in her story. The next morning, the mine awoke in the usual rhythm of labor and dust. Workers poured into the cavern, the air thick with the scent of minerals and sweat. Liara arrived as always, quiet and unassuming, blending seamlessly among the crowd. Her presence went largely unnoticed, yet she carried the same quiet authority in her movements that made her extraordinary. Every action, every decision was measured and precise, the result of instincts honed far beyond the ordinary. Jerk watched her from the entrance, leaning casually against a support beam. He had convinced himself to remain distant yesterday, yet his curiosity about Liara had only grown. There was something undeniable about her, something that made him feel that the universe itself had shifted the moment she arrived in the mine. His instincts whispered caution, but another voice inside him urged him to observe, to learn, to understand. He wasn't ready to speak to her directly, not yet, but he wanted to watch, to see what she was capable of. The foreman's voice boomed through the cavern, cutting through the clatter of drills and carts. "Move faster! Time is money and we've got quotas to meet." The workers groaned but obeyed, pushing their strength and endurance to the limit. Liara, however, seemed unaffected by the rush. She worked steadily, efficiently, her hands moving with perfect coordination. She understood the mine in ways that were invisible to everyone else. The support beams, the unstable rocks, the veins of precious minerals hidden beneath layers of stone. It was as if she could feel the life of the cavern itself. As the morning passed, a sudden tremor shook the mine. Rocks fell from the ceiling and dust clouded the air. Panic rippled through the workers, but Liara remained calm. Her instincts took over, guiding her to a secure spot and helping nearby miners avoid the worst of the falling debris. She shouted clear instructions, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Left, move left, watch the beams." Jerk watched, his mouth slightly open. He had seen skilled workers before, but none moved like her, none with such precision, such confidence. Even in danger, she seemed untouched by fear, a pillar of control in the middle of panic. When the tremor subsided, several miners approached her, eyes wide with gratitude. She offered a small, polite nod, deflecting their attention as if she were just another worker. By midday, the mine had settled into routine again, but the tension lingered. Rumors circulated about the tremor. Some whispered that it was a sign of the mine becoming unstable. Others feared the arrival of inspectors who might demand changes. Liara ignored the speculation, focusing instead on her work, her mind balancing the present with thoughts of the distant stars. During the lunch break, Jerk finally found the courage to approach her. He had observed her for days, and the need to speak outweighed his hesitation. You handled that tremor well," he said cautiously. "Most people would have panicked." Liara looked at him, her eyes calm, and gave a faint smile. "Experience," she said simply, echoing her words from the day before. He nodded, unsure whether to push further. "You seem different," he said carefully. "Not just because of the way you work. There's something about you I can't explain." Liara's smile widened slightly, but she remained guarded. "We all have our strengths," she said softly, keeping her voice neutral. She didn't want to reveal anything, not yet. The universe had taught her that trust was earned slowly, and even a small slip could have dangerous consequences. The afternoon brought more work and more danger. A section of the mine deeper than most had ever reached was scheduled for exploration. The company promised higher pay for anyone who dared to venture there, but the risks were enormous: collapsing walls, pockets of toxic gas, and unstable mineral veins. Many workers hesitated, exchanging worried glances. Liara volunteered without hesitation. "I'll go," she said, her voice firm but calm. No one argued, her confidence was contagious, and it reassured the others. Jerk hesitated but decided to follow, silently amazed at her fearlessness. The deeper they went, the more treacherous the tunnels became. Stalactites hung like daggers from the ceiling, and the ground was uneven and cracked. Liara moved like a shadow, guided by instinct and experience. She pointed out hidden dangers, helping the workers navigate safely. Jerk followed closely, his eyes wide with admiration and a hint of fear. He had never seen anyone so unshakable in the face of danger. Suddenly, a faint glow appeared from a narrow side tunnel. Liara approached cautiously, examining the walls. The minerals in this section were unlike any she had seen before, shimmering with colors that seemed to shift as light touched them. She felt a strange pull, as if the mine itself were calling her attention to something hidden. "This vein, it's unusual," she whispered, almost to herself. "Careful, this section is fragile." Jerk leaned closer, curiosity overcoming his fear. "Unusual how?" Liara's eyes narrowed as she studied the minerals. "These formations, they're not native to this planet. Whoever mined here before might have left traces of something else, something powerful." She didn't elaborate further, but the weight of her words hung in the air. Jerk sensed that he had stumbled into a part of her life he could not yet comprehend. As they worked to extract the minerals safely, the ground trembled again. This time, the movement was stronger, more threatening. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling, and a low rumble echoed through the tunnels. Panic surged among the miners, but Liara's calm presence was a stabilizing force. She shouted instructions, guiding everyone to safety with precision and authority. Jerk followed her closely, relying on her instincts to avoid the worst of the falling debris. He noticed small things: how her hands moved, how she balanced her weight, how she seemed to sense weaknesses in the rock before they became dangerous. It was remarkable, almost inhuman. When the tremor finally passed, the miners looked around in relief. Many glanced at Liara with newfound respect, sensing her skill and courage, though they still had no idea of her true identity. Jerk, however, felt a deeper understanding forming in his mind. She was extraordinary, not just because of skill or courage, but because of something deeper, something that set her apart from everyone else he had ever known. As they made their way back toward the main cavern, Liara spoke quietly to Jerk. "There are things you don't know about me," she said, her tone serious but not unkind. "Things you are not ready to understand." Jerk nodded, unsure how to respond. I just want to help," he said. "If you ever need someone, Liara held up a hand, stopping him gently. "Patience," she said. "One day, perhaps, but not yet, not until the time is right." He nodded again, realizing that whatever secrets she held, they were not to be revealed lightly. Yet he felt a strange sense of trust forming, as if she had chosen him, silently, to be a part of her world when the moment came. By evening, the mine was quiet again. Liara returned to the settlement under the soft glow of Carrion's twin moons. The desert wind carried the scent of minerals and distant oceans, and the sky above sparkled with stars she remembered from her childhood on Ilithar. She paused for a moment, letting the cool night air wash over her. Memories of home, of family, and of her lost kingdom filled her thoughts. The path ahead was uncertain, but her resolve had never been stronger. Jerk watched her from a distance, hidden in the shadows of the settlement's buildings. He could not explain why, but he felt that Liara's story was intertwined with his own in ways he did not yet understand. She was more than just a skilled worker. She carried a legacy, a secret, and a destiny that might one day reshape the lives of everyone around her. That night, as the settlement slept, Liara stood on a quiet rooftop, gazing at the stars. Her mind traced distant constellations, each one a reminder of her home, her family, and the life she had been forced to leave behind. She knew that her path was dangerous, filled with unknown challenges and enemies waiting in the shadows. But she also knew that she could not remain hidden forever. One day, she would step out of the shadows and claim her place in the universe. For now, though, she was a miner. A worker, just another figure in a sea of laborers. Yet beneath the dust, beneath the uniform, and beneath the calm exterior, the heart of a princess beat steadily, patiently, and fiercely. And someone observant, someone brave, had begun to notice. Jerk had seen enough to understand that Liara was extraordinary, though he did not yet know the full truth. He could feel it in the way she moved, the way she handled danger, and the way she seemed connected to forces beyond the ordinary. Something was stirring in the shadows of the mine, and he knew that he would soon be drawn into a story larger than anything he had ever imagined. Liara returned to her quarters, a small room shared with other workers, and carefully removed the traces of dust and sweat from her tunic. She looked in a small mirror, studying her reflection. There was nothing remarkable to the untrained eye, just a tired worker who had survived another day. But she knew the truth. The reflection before her was of someone destined for far greater things. The secret she carried was heavy, but it was also a source of strength. She prepared for the next day with the same quiet determination she had shown since arriving at Carrion. Every movement, every decision, was a step toward survival and toward reclaiming her destiny. The universe had forced her into hiding, but it had not broken her spirit. The life of a miner was temporary. Her real journey had only just begun. Outside, the twin moons of Carrion shone brightly over the desert, casting long shadows across the settlement. Somewhere in the vast universe, forces stirred, forces that might one day seek her out for good or ill. But Liara was ready. And when that time came, she would not run. She would stand, she would fight, and she would reclaim what was rightfully hers. For now, though, the night was quiet, and the secret of the princess hidden among the miners remained safe. Everyone believed she was ordinary. Everyone, that is, except one observant young miner who had begun to understand that extraordinary things often hid in the most unlikely places. And soon, the story that began in the dust and shadows of Carrion's mines would reach far beyond the desert, far beyond the stars, and far beyond what anyone, except Liara herself, could have imagined. The next day, the mine was alive with activity once more, but a different energy. Hung in the air, whispers traveled quickly through the workers, carried by fear and curiosity. Rumors had spread about the minerals Liara had discovered in the deep section yesterday. Some said they were cursed, others claimed they held great power. No one knew exactly what was true, but everyone felt the tension. Liara arrived early, as usual, her movements quiet and deliberate. She had spent the night planning, thinking, and observing. The strange minerals had not escaped her notice. They were unlike anything native to Carrion. Their shimmer, the unusual weight of the rocks, and the subtle hum they emitted when touched all suggested something extraordinary. She didn't reveal her thoughts to anyone, but a quiet plan was forming in her mind. These minerals could be the key to something much larger, something that might help her reclaim her lost heritage. Jerk found her before the morning shift began. "You're going back there?" he asked, his voice low. "The miners are talking, they're nervous." Liara looked at him, her eyes calm. "I need to understand what we found," she said simply. "If we don't explore it carefully, it could be dangerous." He hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. I want to help, he admitted. I feel like this isn't ordinary, you're not ordinary. Liara considered him for a moment. Trust was precious, rare, and dangerous. Yet something in Jerk's gaze, a mixture of courage, intelligence, and sincerity, made her nod. Very well, she said, but you must follow my instructions exactly. One mistake and it could cost us everything. Together, they descended into the deeper tunnels. The familiar walls of the mine gave way to rough, jagged stone, and the air grew thicker, dustier, and more oppressive. The light from their helmets reflected off the crystals embedded in the walls, casting strange, shifting shadows. Liara moved ahead, her senses alert to every sound, every vibration. This section is unstable, she said quietly. Watch the ceiling. The last tremor weakened the support here. Jerk followed closely, careful to step where she stepped, to watch where she looked. He had learned that her attention to detail was remarkable. She noticed cracks in the walls he would have missed, weak points in the ground he would have stumbled over. It was as if she could read the mine's intentions before they became threats. As they reached the area where the unusual minerals were embedded, Liara knelt to examine them closely. Her fingers traced the smooth edges of the stones, and her eyes narrowed as she studied their patterns. These aren't just minerals, she murmured. They've been shaped deliberately. Jerk leaned over, curiosity burning. Shaped by who? Liara shook her head. I don't know yet, but this is not natural. Whoever did this wanted something, perhaps energy, perhaps knowledge. It's powerful and dangerous if used wrong. As they worked, removing small samples carefully, a faint vibration ran through the ground. Liara froze, her instincts alert. Something is coming, she whispered. Something not from this mine? Jerk's heart raced. What do you mean? Before she could answer, a bright light flashed from the entrance of the tunnel. The sound of metal boots echoed against stone, followed by deep voices speaking in a language neither of them recognized. Shadows moved, tall figures stepping into the tunnel with precision and purpose. Liara's heart clenched. She recognized their insignia, symbols of an interstellar organization known for hunting powerful artifacts. They were not miners. They were seekers, and their presence here meant trouble. Stay calm, Liara whispered, pulling Jerk behind a jagged rock formation. Her mind raced, considering every option. Escape would be difficult, the tunnels were narrow, and the seekers had superior technology. Confrontation could be deadly, but she could not let them reach the minerals, not yet. The seekers moved closer, scanning the walls and ground with devices that hummed and glowed. Liara studied their movements, memorizing their patterns. She knew the mine better than anyone, every tunnel, every weak point, every hidden passage. If they were to survive, she would need to use the mine itself as a weapon. Jerk watched her, silent and awed. What are we going to do? He whispered. Liara's eyes gleamed with determination. We fight smart, she said. Not with strength, but with strategy. Follow me exactly. She led him through narrow side passages, routes so small and winding that even the seekers would struggle to follow. Every step was calculated, every turn precise. The mine seemed alive beneath her, responding to her presence as if she had a secret bond with the rocks and minerals. Jerk began to see it too, the way she moved, how she anticipated every obstacle, how danger seemed to avoid her. They reached a hidden chamber, a small space carved out by the natural structure of the mine, large enough for them to catch their breath but hidden from the main tunnels. Liara placed her hand on the shimmering minerals they had collected. We need to protect this, she said. If they get it, it could be catastrophic. Whatever this is, it's not meant to fall into the wrong hands. Jerk nodded, his eyes wide. You're amazing, he said softly. How do you know all this? Liara paused, her face serious. I've learned to survive, she said simply. And sometimes survival requires knowing more than anyone else. That's all. Outside, the seekers continued their methodical search, unaware that their quarry was hidden just out of reach. Liara used every trick she had learned, false trails, hidden crevices, subtle vibrations in the walls to confuse them. Her actions were precise, deliberate, and flawless. Jerk followed, trusting her instinct completely, amazed at her ingenuity. Hours passed, the tension in the mine thickening. The seekers' devices picked up faint traces of the minerals, their frustration growing. Liara watched carefully, calculating their movements and predicting their next steps. She was patient, knowing that a single misstep could cost them dearly. Finally, when the seekers paused near the entrance, assuming they had secured the area, Liara made her move. Using a hidden passage she had memorized, she led Jerk through a series of narrow tunnels that the seekers could not navigate. Dust and rocks shifted as she guided him, creating subtle obstacles that slowed any pursuers. Her plan was perfect: escape without confrontation, preserving the minerals and their lives. Emerging into a less-used section of the mine, Liara paused, letting the cool air of the cavern wash over them. "We're not safe yet," she said, "but we're close. We need to move quickly to the settlement." Jerk's admiration had grown into respect. "You're incredible," he said. "I've never seen anyone like you. How are you so calm under pressure?" Liara smiled faintly, but there was a shadow in her eyes. "Because fear doesn't help," she said. "It only slows you down. You use your mind, your skills, and your instincts. That is how you survive." The journey back was tense, but Liara's knowledge of the mine gave them an advantage. They avoided the main tunnels, using hidden paths and secret exits to evade detection. Every step required caution, every movement required thought. By the time they reached the surface, the twin moons of Carrion had climbed high into the sky, casting a silver glow across the desert. "Are we safe?" Jerk asked, breathing heavily. Liara nodded, though she did not relax completely. "For now," she said. But this was only the beginning. Whoever those seekers are, they won't stop. They will come back, and they will come prepared. Jerk looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. "Then we need to be ready," he said, "and we'll face them together." Liara studied him for a moment, sensing the sincerity and courage in his voice. "Perhaps," she said, "but you must understand, this path is dangerous. The universe is not kind to those who carry secrets, and I carry more than most can imagine." He nodded. "I understand," he said firmly. "I want to help no matter what." For a brief moment, Liara felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she was not entirely alone in this struggle. Perhaps, with allies she could trust, she could reclaim her destiny and protect the secrets of the minerals she had discovered. As they reached the settlement, Liara kept her movements calm and casual, blending with the other workers returning from the mine. No one suspected the close encounter they had faced, and the minerals remained safely hidden, stored carefully where only Liara knew. That night, as the settlement slept under the twin moons, Liara gazed at the stars. Her mind traced constellations familiar from her childhood on Ilithar, thinking of the family she had lost and the kingdom that still awaited her return. The minerals were just the beginning. They were a key, a tool, a responsibility she could not take lightly. Jerk, standing nearby, watched her silently. He did not know the full truth, but he sensed the weight of what she carried. He felt that their meeting was no accident, that their lives were now intertwined by forces far larger than either of them. Liara spoke softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "One day I will return home," she said. "And when that day comes, no one will stand in my way. Not the universe, not enemies, not even time itself. I will reclaim what was lost, and I will protect it, no matter the cost." Jerk did not respond, but he felt the conviction in her voice. He realized that he had become part of something extraordinary, something that would change the course of their lives forever. Outside, the desert wind whispered through the settlement, carrying the scent of distant minerals and the promise of adventure. The secret of the princess among the miners remained safe, but the universe had begun to notice. Forces were stirring, and soon the calm of Carrion's minds would be shattered. Liara and Jerk returned to their quarters, preparing for the days ahead. The minerals were hidden, the seekers temporarily deceived, and the settlement unaware of the danger looming in the shadows. But Liara knew this was only the beginning. The journey ahead would be long, difficult, and fraught with danger. Yet she was ready. Her mind, her skills, and her resolve were stronger than ever. The heart of a princess beat quietly beneath the dust and sweat, patient and fierce, waiting for the moment to rise. And the universe, vast and unknowable, had taken notice. The next morning, the desert sun rose slowly over the settlement, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. Life went on as usual, miners heading to the cavern, children running between small homes, merchants opening stalls. To the casual observer, it was an ordinary day, but Liara knew better. The encounter with the seekers yesterday was only the beginning. Their interest in the strange minerals and in the mine itself meant danger. Every step she took, every movement had to be precise. She arrived at the mine early, as she always did, her steps silent in the cool morning air. Jerk was already there, waiting near the entrance. "I didn't sleep much," he admitted quietly. "I keep thinking about yesterday, about those people and what they want." Liara nodded, her eyes scanning the mine entrance. "We cannot underestimate them," she said calmly. "They will come back, and next time they may be prepared. We must be ready, but we must also remain careful. Any mistake could cost lives, not just ours." Jerk watched her, admiration and concern mixing in his chest. He had followed her into danger before, but each time he saw her, he realized just how extraordinary she truly was. Her calmness, her intelligence, and her ability to stay in control under pressure were beyond anything he had ever seen. And yet beneath that exterior, he sensed a quiet strength, an unyielding determination that carried a hint of vulnerability, the kind only someone who had endured great loss could possess. The miners arrived in waves, their tools clanking, voices echoing through the tunnels. Liara moved among them as if she were one of the ordinary workers, her hands ready to guide and correct where necessary. Even small gestures, lifting a support beam slightly, signaling someone to adjust their footing, made a difference, though few noticed. Those who did rarely understood why her movements were so precise, so effective. By midday, Liara had led a small team into the deeper tunnels again, Jerk among them. The strange minerals awaited, their glow faint but persistent in the shadows. She knelt before the vein, tracing the edges with careful fingers. "We must take only what we need," she said softly. "Anything more could destabilize the mine or attract unwanted attention." Jerk leaned over, examining the minerals. "They're beautiful," he murmured. "But there's something almost alive about them. Do you feel it too?" Liara nodded slightly. "Yes," she admitted. "I cannot explain it fully, but they resonate with energy. Not the kind you can see, but the kind you can feel, powerful and potentially dangerous if mishandled." As they worked, a faint rumble shook the tunnels. Liara's eyes narrowed, her instincts sharpened. She had learned to trust these feelings over years of careful observation. Something or someone was moving above them. The rumble grew stronger, and soon the vibrations became unmistakable. The seekers had returned. Liara gestured for Jerk to stay close. "We cannot confront them here," she whispered. "The tunnels are too narrow, too dangerous. We must lead them away from the minerals." With practiced skill, she led the small group through a series of hidden passages, every step calculated to confuse any pursuers. Jerk followed, awed by her knowledge of the mine. She seemed to anticipate every turn, every obstacle, as if she could see the paths before they existed. The seekers moved carefully, scanning the walls with glowing devices, their metal boots echoing ominously. They were trained, disciplined, and relentless, but they were unfamiliar with the labyrinthine passages of the mine. Liara used that advantage to guide her team, leaving subtle signs that misdirected the pursuers while keeping the minerals safe. Finally, they reached a small cavern not previously used for mining. It was spacious enough to hold them all temporarily, yet hidden from the main tunnels. Liara knelt again, examining the minerals. "We need a plan," she said. "We cannot keep running forever." "They will not give up. We must find a way to protect these and ourselves." Jerk's mind raced. "Do you think we should tell the others, the miners?" Liara shook her head. "No, knowledge is dangerous. Fear spreads quickly, and panic would put everyone at risk. Only those we trust should know. Right now, that is you." He swallowed hard, realizing the weight of her trust. I won't let you down," he said firmly. Liara's eyes softened briefly, though she quickly regained her composed demeanor. "I know," she said. "That is why you are here." As they formulated their plan, a sudden crash echoed through the mine. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling, and a deep voice called out in the language of the seekers. "They cannot escape. The minerals belong to the Order." Liara's eyes narrowed. "They're closer than I thought," she murmured. "We must act now." She led Jerk through a secret exit she had discovered long ago, a narrow passage that twisted and turned, eventually opening to the desert outside the mine. The light of Carrion's twin suns reflected off the sand, blinding the seekers momentarily as they arrived at the mine entrance. Liara paused, crouching behind a rock formation. "We have a small window," she whispered. "We must use it carefully." Jerk followed her lead, his heart pounding. "What do we do?" he asked quietly. Liara's eyes scanned the desert. She noticed a natural ridge nearby, forming a narrow pathway that could conceal their movement. "We lead them away from the settlement," she said. "If they find the miners or the minerals, countless lives will be at risk. Our priority is safety and misdirection." With that, she moved swiftly, Jerk close behind. The desert sand shifted beneath their boots, creating a quiet rhythm as they raced across the dunes. The Seekers followed, but their numbers slowed them. Their technology was advanced, but the terrain was unfamiliar, and Liara's intimate knowledge of the desert gave her the advantage. As they reached the ridge, Liara paused. "We need to create a diversion," she said. She studied the environment carefully, noting a series of loose rocks and narrow gullies. Using her experience, she rolled boulders strategically, sending small avalanches down the slopes. The noise and sudden movement forced the Seekers to divert, buying them precious time. Jerk watched, impressed by her ingenuity. "You're incredible," he said. Liara allowed herself a brief smile. "Sometimes survival requires creativity," she said, "and courage." They continued across the desert, navigating carefully to ensure they were not followed. Liara's mind was focused, calculating their next moves, while Jerk tried to keep pace. They were exhausted, but the determination in Liara's eyes kept them moving. She had faced threats far greater than this before, and she would not falter now. Finally, they reached a small, abandoned outpost near the edge of the desert. It offered shelter and concealment, and more importantly, it provided a vantage point to observe the Seekers without being seen. Liara guided Jerk inside, checking the surroundings meticulously. "Safe for now," she said, letting herself breathe for the first time that day. "But they will regroup, they always do, and they will come back stronger." Jerk sank onto a dusty bench, exhausted. "Why do they want these minerals so badly?" he asked. Liara looked at him, her expression serious. "I don't know fully, but I suspect they are not ordinary resources. The minerals have energy, and power attracts attention. Those who understand it can become very dangerous or very powerful. We must protect them until we understand their full purpose." Hours passed as they planned their next steps. Liara explained her strategy. The minerals must be kept hidden, and the mine must appear untouched. The Seekers would return, but they would not find what they were looking for unless guided by mistakes. It was a delicate balance of deception, patience, and caution. Jerk realized that he had become part of something far larger than himself. He was no longer just a miner. He was an ally, a witness, and potentially a participant in a story that could shape the fate of worlds. The trust Liara placed in him was immense, and he vowed silently to live up to it. As night fell, Liara stood at the edge of the outpost, gazing at the stars. Her thoughts drifted to Ilithar, to her family, and to the life she had been forced to leave behind. The path ahead was dangerous, but she was ready. Her skills, her knowledge, and her determination would guide her, and those who chose to follow her would find strength in her leadership. Jerk joined her silently. He did not speak, but his presence was a quiet reassurance. Liara glanced at him, sensing his growing resolve. Together, they were stronger, more capable, and better prepared to face the challenges ahead. In the distance, the desert lay quiet, but Liara knew it would not remain so for long. Forces were gathering, and the universe was beginning to stir. The minerals were a key, a symbol, and a source of power, and those who sought them would not give up easily. Liara's mind turned to the future. She had survived exile, danger, and loss. She had hidden her identity for years, blending among ordinary workers while carrying the heart of a princess. But she knew the time was coming when hiding would no longer be an option. She would rise, reclaim her destiny, and protect what was precious, not just for herself, but for those who could not protect it on their own. And somewhere in the shadows, the Seekers prepared their next move. They had underestimated her once, but they would not do so again. The game had begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. Liara turned to Jerk. "Tomorrow we return," she said softly. "We must assess the mine, secure the minerals, and prepare for whatever comes next. The universe will not wait for us, and neither can we." Jerk nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I'm ready," he said. "Whatever it takes." Liara's gaze returned to the stars. She felt the quiet pulse of determination, the unshakable belief that she could face any challenge. The minerals, the Seekers, the mine, they were all pieces of a larger puzzle. And she, Liara, the princess hidden among miners, would be the one to solve it. The night deepened, and the desert stretched endlessly under the twin moons. Liara and Jerk rested, knowing that the dawn would bring new trials, new dangers, and new opportunities. They were ready. The story of the princess in disguise was far from over, and the universe was watching closely. The first light of dawn spread slowly across the desert of Carrion, bathing the settlement in soft gold and red hues. The mine, which had been the quiet backdrop to daily life, now held secrets far larger than anyone could imagine. Liara and Jerk stood at the edge of the outpost, observing the horizon. Today would decide the safety of the minerals, the survival of the settlement, and perhaps the future of Liara's destiny. Liara's mind was focused, analyzing every possibility. The Seekers had returned last night, as she expected, and she had watched their movements carefully from a distance. They were relentless, skilled, and organized, but they underestimated one thing: the intelligence, patience, and courage of someone who had survived an entire galaxy's worth of threats. She had trained her mind to think several steps ahead, anticipating danger and controlling outcomes with precision. Today, she would prove that her hidden strength was far greater than anyone could guess. Jerk followed her silently, understanding the weight of the moment. He had grown since their first encounter in the mine, stronger, braver, and more aware of the dangers that lurked beyond ordinary sight. He had seen Liara's extraordinary skills, but today he would witness something even greater: the heart and strategy of a true leader. They approached the mine cautiously, moving across the dunes in silence. Liara's eyes scanned the terrain, noting every rock, every shadow, every potential hazard. She gestured for Jerk to halt near a cluster of boulders. From there, they could observe the main entrance without being seen. The Seekers were already there, their advanced devices scanning the tunnels, their boots kicking up dust as they prepared to enter. Liara's heart did not race. Her mind was calm and precise. She had anticipated their movements, their overconfidence, and their predictable patterns. "They will come through the main tunnel first," she said softly. "Then they will split to search the rest. We have limited time to secure the minerals and protect the miners." "Follow my lead exactly as I say." Jerk nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. "I'm ready," he said firmly. Liara led him to a hidden side passage, one that only she knew existed. The walls were narrow and jagged, but they allowed a direct path to the chamber containing the rare minerals. Every step was deliberate, silent, and controlled. Liara moved like a shadow, her senses alert to the smallest changes in the vibrations of the earth. Jerk followed, keeping pace with her, relying on her guidance and instinct. When they reached the chamber, Liara knelt beside the minerals, examining them carefully. "We must move quickly," she said. "The Seekers will realize the main tunnel is clear soon. We need to protect these before they can act." Together, they began carefully extracting the minerals, placing them into reinforced containers she had prepared in advance. The shimmer of the stones reflected in her eyes, and she felt a familiar pulse of energy. These minerals were extraordinary, and she understood their importance more than anyone else could. Suddenly, the mine trembled. The Seekers had discovered the hidden passages, and they were approaching fast. Liara's gaze hardened. "They're here," she whispered. "We must defend the chamber, but without attracting too much attention. Strategy first, force second." Jerk's hands shook slightly, but he trusted her completely. "What should I do?" he asked. Liara gestured to a set of rocks positioned along the chamber floor. "Use these," she said. "We can create obstacles, slow them down, watch my movements, and follow." The first Seekers appeared at the edge of the chamber. Their devices glowed with scanning energy, but Liara had anticipated this. With precise timing, she rolled rocks into the path of the intruders, causing them to stumble. Dust filled the air, masking their vision, and the sound of falling stones echoed like thunder through the tunnels. Jerk followed her instructions, throwing additional rocks, and together they created a temporary blockade. Liara then activated a small device she had kept hidden, emitting a high-pitched frequency that interfered with the Seekers' scanners. They hissed in frustration, their advanced technology temporarily neutralized. "Quickly!" Liara shouted. "We move the minerals while they are distracted." With practiced hands, she carried the containers, moving them to a secret alcove she had discovered deep within the tunnels. Jerk assisted, marveling at her efficiency and calm under pressure. Despite the chaos, Liara's mind worked like a precise machine, every calculation, every move perfectly timed. The Seekers regained their composure and advanced cautiously, but Liara had anticipated every path they could take. She led Jerk through hidden tunnels, each turn calculated to confuse and misdirect. The intruders' heavy boots echoed faintly behind them, but Liara remained calm. She had trained for moments like this, and she would not fail. Finally, they reached the deepest chamber, one so secluded that even the most determined Seekers would struggle to find it. Liara placed the minerals carefully on a platform she had prepared, ensuring they were secure and protected. The glow of the stones lit the chamber, casting strange reflections across the walls. Jerk looked at her in awe. How did you know about this place?" he whispered. Liara's eyes softened for a brief moment, her voice calm and quiet. "This mine has secrets," she said. "Secrets that even the owners do not know. I have studied it for years. The minerals are safe here, at least for now." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the tunnels above. The Seekers had discovered their deception and were now trying to force entry. Liara's eyes narrowed. "They are persistent," she said. "But persistence alone is not enough. We will outsmart them." She quickly formulated a plan, using the natural formations of the mine to create obstacles, narrow passages, and dead ends. Jerk followed her every move, trusting her completely. The Seekers entered the chamber, only to be met with confusion and delay. Rocks fell, tunnels shifted, and the intricate maze of passages worked to Liara's advantage. One Seeker tried to follow directly, but Liara anticipated the move. She triggered a subtle mechanism that caused a small section of the tunnel to collapse, blocking their path. Dust filled the air, and the sound of falling rock echoed through the cavern. The Seekers paused, realizing they had underestimated their opponent. Liara and Jerk used the distraction to move the minerals further into the deepest recesses of the mine. "This will keep them occupied," she said, "and it will give us time to reach the surface safely." Hours passed as they navigated the tunnels, moving carefully, avoiding detection, and ensuring the minerals were secure. The sun began to rise over Carrion, casting light through small openings in the mine. Liara paused, taking a deep breath. "We're close," she said. "Once we reach the surface, we can regroup and plan our next move." Jerk looked at her, admiration and gratitude in his eyes. "You're amazing," he said softly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Liara gave him a faint smile. "You were brave," she said. "Courage is just as important as skill, and you followed me when most would have faltered." Finally, they emerged from a hidden exit far from the main tunnel. The desert stretched endlessly before them, quiet and still under the early morning sun. Liara glanced back at the mine, knowing the Seekers would regroup and try again, but confident that the minerals were safe for now. "We need to prepare," she said. "They will not stop. But we have an advantage. They do not know the mine as we do, and they do not understand the power we protect." Jerk nodded. "What happens next?" he asked. Liara's gaze turned toward the horizon, toward the stars she had once called home. "Next," she said, "we protect what matters. We fight when necessary, and we prepare for the day when I can reclaim my destiny fully. Today, we survive. Tomorrow, we rise." Together, they returned to the settlement, moving quietly across the dunes. The twin moons of Carrion still lingered in the sky, fading as the sun's light grew stronger. Liara's mind raced with plans, possibilities, and strategies. The journey ahead would be long and dangerous, but she was ready. She had survived exile, threats, and deception, and she would continue to survive. In the safety of her quarters, Liara examined the minerals once more. Their shimmer, their energy, and their potential filled her with a sense of responsibility. They were more than resources. They were keys, tools, and symbols of a future she intended to shape. She placed them carefully in reinforced containers, ensuring their protection until she could fully understand their purpose. Jerk stood nearby, watching her work. "You've been hiding all of this, all your skills, your knowledge. Why?" he asked softly. Liara paused, her hands still on the minerals. "Because the universe is not kind to those with power," she said. "Because some secrets must be protected. And because the life of a princess, even one in hiding, is never simple." Jerk nodded, understanding more than she realized. He felt honored to be trusted, to be part of this hidden world. He realized that Liara's strength was not just in her skill or intelligence. It was in her courage, her patience, and her unwavering determination to protect what mattered. As night fell, the settlement rested peacefully under the twin moons. Liara stood at the edge of the settlement once more, gazing at the stars. Her thoughts returned to Ilithar, to her family, and to the life she had lost. She knew that one day she would return. One day she would reclaim her destiny, protect her people, and ensure that the forces who sought power would never harm those she cared about. Jerk stood beside her, silent but present. Together, they had survived the Seekers, secured the minerals, and faced the first challenge in a story far larger than either of them had imagined. Liara took a deep breath, feeling the quiet strength within her. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous, but she was ready. The heart of a princess beat steadily beneath the dust, the sweat, and the disguise, patient, fierce, and unyielding. And though the universe would test her again and again, she would rise, always. The minerals remained safe, the seekers temporarily thwarted, and the hidden princess continued her path, one that would one day lead her back to her home among the stars. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, her destiny waited, ready to be claimed.